Director Hoover, Director Hoover, and distinguished guests all, this is a very, very happy occasion, and I'm pleased to welcome each of you as President of Mutual of Omaha, to welcome you individually to this dinner tonight. We are here to pay our respect and deep appreciation to the Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation and to that institution itself, which he has made his life's work. The 44 years that Mr. Hoover has been associated with the Justice Department constitutes approximately 1/4 of the entire time that our national government has existed since George Washington's first inaugural. And it also represents nearly 85% of the time that the FBI has been established. Most of that time, as you know, he has served as its director. So it may and should be said that the man whom we honor tonight has contributed more to the internal safety of the people of our country than any other person, living or dead. I have sought to emphasize the safety aspect of Mr. Hoover's many responsibilities because the award that he will receive this evening is given only for contribution to health or safety. And I feel quite sure that the members of the Board of Judges who make the selection and the mutual directors who implement it, so to speak, would want the Department of Justice to know that all of the requirements and regulations and qualifications and conditions have been fully met. The late Dr. C.C. CRISS, for whom this award was named, was the founder of our organization. He was truly a great man who guided its destiny from 1910 until 1949. He was motivated by the belief that only through individual and institutional effort designed to meet social and economic problems could the American way of life be preserved for future generations. And in 1950, when this award was created in his name, Dr. CRISS was an inarticulate invalid. He was completely paralyzed. But his powers of perception and apparently of comprehension were very good. So we were pleased indeed that he was able to observe on television in the year 1950 the presentation of the first award by his brother, Dr. Neil L. CRISS, to Doctors Philip Hench and Edward Kendall for their joint efforts in the development of cortisone. Dr. Hench cannot be here tonight. He's abroad in a foreign land. But Dr. Neil CRISS is here and Dr. Kendall, and I would like to have them stand and be recognized at this time. Will you please stand? The next award for contribution to health was made to that distinguished Dr. Howard Rusk of New York City for his great work in the field of physical rehabilitation, and he is with us tonight, Dr. Howard Rusk. Mr. W. Earl Hall, a newspaper editor, reporter, and publisher of Mason City, Iowa. We sort of tie them all together out in the Midwest and do all those things at one time, was given the award next for his contribution to safety. For some 30 years, Mr. Hall devoted his spare time and all of the time that he could take away from his work to traffic safety education. Mr. Earl Hall of Mason City, Iowa. The next recipient of the award for contribution to health was Dr. Jonas Salk of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Dr. Salk cannot be here tonight, but he sends his congratulations and best wishes. The last recipient and the youngest, ironically, departed this life on January 18, 1961, from a malignancy of traumatic origin at the age of 34. He was the late Dr. Thomas Dooley, the famous young man from St. Louis, Missouri. He brought health care and medical aid to the people of Laos and the Far East. Of him it was said by the Board of Judges when the presentation was made, he is an outstanding example of a free man, helping other free men on a person-to-person basis. And the then President of the United States in 1959 said, he has made friends for America the old-fashioned way, face-to-face, people-to-people, human heart to human heart. Let us pause for a moment, silent prayer in the memory of Dr. Tom Dooley. Thank you. This description of Dr. Dooley, who dedicated his life to other people, could well apply to the chairman of the Board of Judges himself. Dr. Charles Mayo, a distinguished surgeon, honored by our own and many foreign countries, is the son, nephew, and grandson of great men of medicine before him. He has done much to make American medicine symbolic of the very best in personal health care. And like so many of you who have gathered with us this evening in honor of Director Hoover, Dr. Mayo has given freely and willingly of his time beyond his professional calling to help his community, his state, and his nation. I would like to call upon him, this time Dr. Charles William Mayo, the chairman of the distinguished Board of Judges who has come from Rochester, Minnesota, to be with us tonight to make this presentation. Dr. Mayo.
That shouldn't have been, but I appreciate it. God. Here I am. VJ, my thanks to you. And it's a real privilege to be here with so many friends, I hope. If they're not, they should be. You know, gosh, I spent quite a bit this afternoon thinking what I was going to say. And I'm going to start by one thing, if you don't mind, by naming and asking that the applause be kept quiet until the end, simply to name and to have rise those individuals who belong to this board of judges that are present. There are others who are not present, but I am not going to name them. You can read them. First is Lieutenant General James Doolittle, Chairman of Space Technology Laboratories, Incorporated, and a member of our board of Mutual of Omaha. You mind? See? Just so people... Well, you need the exercise. Mr. Philip Klosnick, United States Mission to the United Nations. Mr. William L. Lawrence, science writer for the New York Times. I told you about not clapping until it was all over. Don McNeil. You know him. You listen to him, so do I. Dr. Thomas Perrin. Graduate School of Public Health, University of Pittsburgh. The Honorable Howard Pyle, President of the National Safety Council. Mr. A. Stoddard, President of the Union Pacific Railroad Company. Mr. DeWitt Wallace, Reader's Digest. I don't think they have a very wide circulation, but now you can clap for all of them. That's a fair cross-section of a much wider group who had this business of judging as to who was to receive this tonight. It's good to say, I'm awfully glad I had this with me, because I came by a very devious route to Washington. I came by way of Texas and Hot Springs, and got in here this morning. Mrs. Mayo and I went to Chicago and got on a private car in Santa Fe in Chicago and went to Temple, Texas. We went with a host and hostess by the name of Winston, Dr. and Mrs. Winston, who happens to be the head of the doctoring business for the Santa Fe. That's why he had a private car, and that's why my wife said she'd like to go because it didn't cost her anything, or me. Well, anyway, we got on, and I thought to myself, well, I'm sure I've known him before, but I thought, well, you know, suppose I have to introduce him to somebody. And I began to think, well, you know, this memory and association, I thought of Winston cigarettes. And then I thought, Jesus, suppose I forget that, and I introduce him as Lord and Lady Chesterfield. Well, anyway, I finally began thinking about, after I did what I had to do in Texas and in Hot Springs, Then I begin to think about tonight. I begin to think about Hoover. And I think, well, geez, Hoover. Herbert Hoover, a cleaner, you know. I think, well, God, suppose I make a great mistake tonight and I don't call you J. Edgar Hoover, which I do now, because you've been selected by a very esteemed group of people for something that I believe should have been done before. You could have used this money, I know. And I'd have been glad to have helped you use it. But anyway, huh? Well, anyway, this group of people that I happen to represent as chairman of this committee, I don't know of anyone that could have been better selected than you, Dr. Hoover. And nobody who has given so freely, so unselfishly, so, well, whatever you want to say that's really good. I don't happen to be able to think of it right now, but it must be good if I... But I thought there is a little analogy, and the one who made me think of this was V.J. He said, you know, there is an analogy between what you do in your profession and what I, and there are other doctors here, do. Our objective in life is to try to preserve life and to cut out those things that happen to occur within a person's body and try to make their life better, longer, and so forth. Well, you do the same thing for our country, you and your organization. And it's for that reason that I really think there is an analogy. So, it is my privilege on behalf of Mutual of Omaha and of the Board of Judges to present you with this. It can be melted down. I understand it's gold. And it has an Indian head on it. But it is representative of what we all feel deeply, honestly, and fully, that there's nobody who deserves it more than you. This is the CRISS Award from Mutual of Omaha, and I'm going to ask our president, V.J. Scott, my friend, and all of your friends, he's everybody's friend, to give you the check. Do you mind, Jim? No.
Thank you indeed. Very nice indeed. Doctor, awfully nice indeed. Thank you very much.
Not very good, but it's the best I can do.
I'll have you guard that check for me if you want to keep an eye on it. Dr. Mayo, President Scott, Dr. Elson, distinguished guests and friends. This is indeed a great honor which has been made possible by the personal sacrifices and devotion to duty of my associates in the FBI. I accept the CRISS Award with deep humility on behalf of the dedicated men and women of the FBI. I am most grateful to the awards committee and to Mutual of Omaha for being the recipient of this great award. Ours is the greatest republic in the history of mankind. Our homeland was carved out of a vast wilderness by heroic men and women who were determined at any cost that their children and their children's children might live in freedom under God. It is our sacred responsibility to help protect that heritage and to preserve it for future generations. I would like to be able to report that the internal enemies of our society have virtually disappeared, that they have faded into the dim past like the dangers of the wagon trail and the northwest frontier. But this is not so. From the depths of our criminal and subversive underworlds, strong enemies, deadly enemies, continue to challenge the right of decent Americans to live in freedom and dignity under God. Today we are facing a crime problem of such magnitude that it represents an acute danger to our national survival. There is a serious weakening of moral and spiritual fibers in our society. We must never forget that a vitiated state of morals, a corrupted public conscience, is incompatible with true freedom. During the past decade, crime has nearly doubled across the United States, outpacing the growth of our population at the rate of 4 to 1. A murder is committed every 58 minutes. There's a vicious assault every 4 minutes, a forcible rape every 34 minutes, a robbery every 6 minutes, and a burglary every 39 seconds. Crime is no respecter of age, race, or creed. Each year, the cost of crime climbs higher and higher until it now has reached an alarming total of more than $60 million each day. Year after year, we find that nearly half of the persons arrested for burglaries and larcenies, and almost two-thirds of those arrested for automobile thefts, are less than 18 years of age. America's juvenile criminality is directly traceable to the failure of adults to meet their moral obligations. In all too many cases, the primary responsibility rests with the parents. If respect for law and order and for the rights of others are instilled in children at an early age, and if parents set a proper example for their children, we might keep juvenile delinquency from becoming the door to careers in crime. I can see no difference between the responsibility of a 17 or 18-year-old who willfully robs, assaults, or murders, and that of an adult who commits the same crime. Each should be held strictly accountable for his act against society. These are not juvenile delinquents. They are vicious young thugs, and they should be treated accordingly. I share with Blackstone the premise that the main strength and force of the law consists in the penalty annexed to it. The most deeply entrenched forces of the underworld in our nation today are the professionals who comprise the jealously guarded ranks of organized crime. These are the criminal elite, assuming an air of legitimacy, who buy high-priced legal advisors, better termed lawyers criminal, and frontmen to shield them from proper punishment. These underworld characters with their criminal scum flout the sacrifices and the blood and the sweat and the toil of 6 generations of dedicated Americans, which secured the freedoms that they enjoy. These persons wear our constitutional guarantees as a cloak of protected armor, They are unrestrained by those moral considerations which constitute the lifeblood of a democracy. In their eyes, the United States is a haven of rights without responsibilities, of privileges free from obligation to the society which has made them possible. Theirs is a virulent, parasitic existence consuming the lifeblood of the freedom which they would enjoy. Unfortunately, they are assisted all too often by public lethargy and by some jurists obsessed with the virtues of legal technicalities, as well as by theoreticians with a soft approach who purport to be experts in the field of law enforcement and penology. Justice is not impartially meted out when the victim and society suffer while the criminal goes free. We in America emphasize the great value of liberty and the importance of sympathy for the accused. The law-abiding citizen is entitled to more considerations on the part of some of our courts. The basic purpose of the criminal law is to protect society, not the criminal. As an eminent justice of our United States Supreme Court observed, the necessity of public protection against crime is being submerged by an overflow of sentimentality. In this nation, disrespect for law and order is a tragic moral sickness which attacks and destroys the American traditions of honesty, integrity, and fair play. Directly or indirectly, its victims include every man, woman, and child in the United States. It is a national scandal that the streets of many of our cities are as fraught with danger as the jungle trail. Each of us, to his fullest capacity, must help shoulder the burden of this growth of lawlessness and strive to end it. Our nation's moral strength has slipped alarmingly. One cannot preach immorality and practice immorality, nor can he preach morality and practice immorality. National corruption is the sum total of individual corruption. We must follow the teachings of God if we hope to heal this moral illness. The FBI is conducting an all-out war on crime. The entire law enforcement profession has never been more united in the fight against crime than it is today. However, in order to achieve the desired results, law enforcement must have the solid backing of every decent citizen. The striving for law and order, for human decency, for equal opportunity is a matter of conscience, public and private. So long as dishonesty and evasion of responsibility are tolerated, it is inevitable that law enforcement will mirror this breakdown in the moral fiber of our society. But if we continue to progress in the tradition of free men, with adequate safeguards against any invasion of the rights and dignity of the individual, we will ultimately achieve victory over those who defy law and order throughout our great nation. Today marks the 20th anniversary of a tragic event in our history, the attack on Pearl Harbor, which triggered America's entry into the World War II. That war cost the lives of 400,000 Americans, courageous men who at a time of gravest need sprang forward in the noble tradition of their forefathers to defend the cause of freedom with their lives. But now, 2 decades later, in Europe, in Asia, and in the neighboring areas of the Western Hemisphere, we find stark evidence of a grim truth that liberties once won must constantly be defended. During our generation, a new menace, international communism, has arisen to threaten free men throughout the world. Actually, there is little basic difference between the fascism of Adolf Hitler and the atheistic tyranny practiced behind the Iron Curtain. The Soviet Union and her satellites are a godless dictatorship ruled by warped and twisted minds. We are at war with the communists, and the sooner every red-blooded American realizes this, the safer we will be. Naturally, we want to live in peace, but we do not want peace at any price. We want peace with honor and integrity, and we intend to assure it for the future. The extent of the menace posed by the philosophy of communism is clear-cut and obvious. However, it is absolutely necessary that we attack and oppose it calmly, rationally, and objectively. We must continue to stiffen our national backbone in dealing with the communists and their dupes, sympathizers, and apologists. If we relax our guard for one moment, we court national disaster. The atheistic communist dictatorship now controls 1/4 of the Earth's surface and more than 1/3 of our peoples. The communist threat from without must not blind us to the communist threat from within. The latter is reaching into the very heart of America through its espionage agents and a cunning, defiant, and lawless Communist Party which is fanatically dedicated to the Marxist cause of world enslavement and destruction of the foundations of our republic. The Communist Party in this country has attempted to infiltrate and to subvert every segment of our society. The party's efforts have been thwarted in this country by the government's internal security programs, by investigation, arrest, and prosecution of party functionaries, and by widespread intelligent public opposition to the communist philosophy. Recently, the Communist Party in the United States deliberately and flagrantly refused to comply with the United States Supreme Court decision, which requires it to register as an agent of the Soviet Union with the Attorney General. Thereby, it once again has formally declared itself to be a lawless organization. No longer can its members falsely profess that the party is a legitimate political organization, nor can its sympathizers and fellow travelers feign innocence of the true nature of the un-American conspiracy which they support. Unfortunately, we are plagued with some Soviet apologists who time after time would have us betray the cause of international freedom and justice by yielding to the red fascists in the Kremlin on vital moral issues. We also have in our midst some timid souls who have so little faith in the strength of democracy that they would have our country yield to the international threats and intimidation. I include those persons who urge appeasement at any price and those who chant that it's better to be red than dead. America's emblem is the soaring eagle, not the blind and timid mole. Fear, apologies, defeatism, and cowardice are alien to the thinking of true Americans. As for me, I would rather be dead than red. America does not have to apologize to anyone, certainly not to the arrogant, shoe-pounding Khrushchev and his puppets, nor to those neutrals whose neutrality is but an evidence of moral weakness. We should keep our heads up, looking for honorable solutions and selling America, rather than keep our heads down, looking for shelters and the compromise of human rights. Those who follow the road of appeasement do not know the true meaning of freedom. They do not comprehend the misery of communist enslavement. You will not find their cheap slogans on the lips of the Hungarian refugees, the East German patriots, nor other freedom-loving persons who have escaped from behind the Iron Curtain. Nor do you find their apologies in the writings of great American patriots, such as Patrick Henry, who asked the searching question, is life so dear or peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Or that of Benjamin Franklin, who declared, they that can give up essential liberty to obtain a temporary safety deserves neither liberty nor safety. In the fight to preserve our republic, it is not enough merely to be against crime or against subversion or against any of the other enemies which weaken the nation's strength from within. To stand for the American ideal, to work for the cause of liberty and justice, these give true meaning to life in our great republic. If we are to effectively resist the eroding influence of communism, it is imperative that all citizens of this nation exhibit in more positive ways the value and superiority of our form of government over any foreign ideology. Let us also work for a revolution by spirit, not by the sword. Let these be the vital forces at work in our society and not merely slogans. Let us be for America all the way, but at the same time, let us not be taken in by those who promote hysteria, by the distortion and misrepresentation of the true facts, whether they be the proponents of chauvinism of the extreme right or pseudo-liberalism of the extreme left. At another hour of grim challenge, a full century ago, Abraham Lincoln urged the American people, let us have faith that right makes might, and in that faith, let us to the end dare to do our duty as we understand it. We are living in an age of uncertainty, an age of awesome national peril, an age when the struggle between freedom and totalitarian enslavement is drawing to a climax. We now have need of faith as never before in our nation's history. We must revive within ourselves the faith of our forefathers, which enabled them to work and overcome adversity. Our nation holds in trust the last hope of a free civilization. Our dedication to truth, justice, and individual dignity must not be compromised. If we are strong enough and care enough and maintain our national integrity, this nation will survive the terrible threat that presents itself today. With God's help, we will meet the challenge of survival. This is the heritage of America. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Hoover. You have honored us by accepting the award. And I hope that the statements you made this evening will permeate the minds and the hearts and the wills of all of the people of our country with conscientious purpose, men, women, and children. We're very grateful to you for that very fine statement. As an indication that this is an evening of national importance and that the people of our country do support the statements that the director made, I am privileged to read to you a letter just received from the President of the United States, directed to you, sir, in which he says, in your more than 36 years of dedicated public service as Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, a great many honors recognizing your leadership and integrity have been bestowed upon you. The Mutual of Omaha CRISS Award is further proof of the high esteem in which all America holds your record of untiring effort in the fields of federal law enforcement and national security. I am proud to add my congratulations to you and to express again my gratitude for your outstanding contribution to the nation. Sincerely, John F. Kennedy, President of the United States. We we have a large number of telegrams, some of which I have here, including one from the Attorney General who, because of illness, was unable to be here tonight and who also extends his congratulations and best wishes. And I think it would be appropriate on this anniversary of Pearl Harbor, as pointed out by the director a few moments ago, and in view of the significance of this occasion when we have joined, and I hope our fellow citizens throughout the country, in honoring the man who is the symbol of the security and the tradition and the conscience of our country, if we should conclude the formal portion of this program, not by the usual benediction, although we have many fine clergymen here who would grace any group for that purpose, but that all of us might participate in it, and then I ask you to please remain for the balance of the program. But let us all participate on this 7th day of December, 1961, in a prayer by singing, "God Bless America." Will you please rise for that purpose? We have the orchestra. God bless America, land that I love, and beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above, from the mountain to the prairie, to the ocean, and all. God bless America, my home sweet home. God bless America, my home sweet home. Thank you very much, gentlemen. There's been some curiosity about the television arrangement here. In case some of you are wondering about where you were supposed to be tonight, why, this is not a live television program. Portions of it will be reproduced Sunday afternoon on the program which our organization sponsors with Chet Huntley at 4:30, I believe it is, Eastern Standard Time. Or 5:30 Eastern Time. I'm still in Nebraska. It's 4:30 in Nebraska. So you'll see portions of it there. And Dr. Mayo, who spoke rather deprecatingly, I thought, of some of the members of the Board of Judges who couldn't be here, will take it all back tomorrow, Sunday, because Irene Dunn is going to be on. She's one of the members of the Board of Judges, and she's going to say what she thinks of J. Edgar Hoover. So I hope you'll see it. She was very sorry she couldn't be here tonight. Now, we're going to have some entertainment shortly, thanks to a very close friend of the director, who, unlike our organization, prefers to be anonymous. And I think you're going to like this. It's quite a show. And while they're getting ready for it, and before introducing the man who will be in charge of it, I want to introduce the other members of the Board of Mutual who are your hosts. And I can't do like Dr. Mayo. I'm going to have to mention those who are not here because I'm working for them. But these are here, and will they please stand as their names are called, and please withhold your applause. And I assume that on the other end of the room at the threshold there, you're getting ready for the entertainment. Because without taking anything away from our directors, this is really a sort of a fill-in here. You've already met General Doolittle. Will you please stand, a member of the Board of Directors of our organization? Now, please withhold your applause. General Doolittle. Henry Karp, President of the First National Bank of Morrill, Nebraska, and Vice Chairman of the Board of the Omaha National Bank. William D. Lane, former President of the National Paper Box Manufacturers. Major General retired Melvin J. Maz, you all know him, Chairman of the President's Committee on Physically Handicapped. Dr. Charles Mayo, you've met, he's a member of our board. Don't be reluctant to get up. Stand up. E.T. Meredith, the Vice President of the Meredith Publishing Company of Des Moines, Iowa. Hugh V. Plunkett, Jr., Attorney at Law and President of the Sterling State Bank of Austin, Minnesota. Claire M. Rodowig, President of the Association of Western Railways and Chairman of the Chicago Planning Commission of Chicago, Illinois. Carlton P. Swiler, President of the Orchard and Wilhelm Company of Omaha. Oscar M. Taylor, retired executive of the AT&T and former executive vice president of the New York Telephone Company from San Francisco, California. J. Leroy Welch, president of the Butler Welch Grain Company and former chairman of the President's Committee on Increased Industrial Use of Agricultural Products, Mr. Welch. E.S. Adams, senior vice president of our organization. Dr. CRISS, whom you've met, who's a member of the board. W.J. McGinn, our comptroller, whom I hope will approve the bill for tonight, and myself. We have two gentlemen who could not be here, and I must mention their names. Thomas F. O'Neill, chairman of the board of the General Tire and Rubber Company, who sends his congratulations, and Mr. J.C. Kennedy, who says rather sadly he's no relation to the Kennedys, but he's a J.C. Kennedy of Omaha, Nebraska, another member of our board. That's our board of directors, and thank you. I'm sure I express the feelings of all of our directors in thanking you for coming to this affair tonight. And I'd like to present Mr. Lewis Quinn, the famous entertainer known as Roscoe the Bookie. I don't know whether that has any connection with the honored guest tonight or not. Roscoe the Bookie on 77 Sunset Strip. Will you please take over, Mr. Quinn? Thank you.